December 1968, Vietnam. One American soldier stood alone against 250 enemy fighters. He was shot 14 times. Grenades exploded around him. His legs were shattered. A bayonet went completely through his stomach, but he kept fighting. For 6 hours, he held that hill. They put him in a body bag, declared him dead. But inside that bag, his eyes opened. He spit blood to show he was still alive. When they finally counted, 140 enemy batas surrounded his position. This is the story of Roy Benavidez, the man who made death itself retreat. And what you're about to hear will change how you think about courage forever. Before we begin, let me tell you something. I've researched hundreds of Medal of Honor stories. I've read thousands of combat reports. I've interviewed dozens of veterans. And every single one of them, when you mention Roy Benavidez, they stop talking. They get quiet. Because what this man did doesn't make sense. It breaks every rule of human endurance. It defies medical science. It challenges everything we think we know about the limits of the human body and spirit. Military historians have called it the most brutal Medal of Honor action in American history. Doctors said he'd never walk again. The Army declared him dead, twice. His own body should have shut down a dozen different times. But Roy Benavidez had made a promise to his brothers in arms, and nothing, not bullets, not explosions, not even death itself, would stop him from keeping that promise. This is not Hollywood. This is not fiction. Every word you're about to hear is documented, verified, and witnessed by multiple soldiers who were there. This is the true story of Master Sergeant Roy Benavidez, May 2nd, 1968, and the 6 hours that proved one man can hold back an army. To understand what Roy Benavidez did that day, you need to understand who he was before Vietnam. Because heroes aren't born on the battlefield. They're forged by every challenge they've ever faced. Roy Benavidez was born in 1935 in South Texas, near the Mexican border. His parents were sharecroppers, some of the poorest people in America. When Roy was 7 years old, his father died. His mother died a year later. Roy and his brother were orphans, taken in by relatives who didn't want them, who treated them like servants. He grew up picking cotton in the Texas heat, 10 hours a day in the fields. His hands bled, his back ached, but he never complained. He went to a segregated school where Mexican-American kids like him were punished for speaking Spanish. He faced racism, poverty, and a future that looked hopeless. But Roy Benavidez had something inside him that no one could see. A refusal to quit, a determination to prove everyone wrong. At 17, he dropped out of school and joined the Army. They tried to reject him. He was too small, they said. Only 5'6". Not strong enough. He kept showing up until they let him in. The Army became his family. He found his purpose. He volunteered for everything. Airborne training, Ranger School, Special Forces. Every challenge, he attacked it with fury. The kid who picked cotton became one of the most elite soldiers in the American military. In 1965, Roy was sent to Vietnam for the first time. He stepped on a landmine. The explosion shattered his back. Doctors told him his war was over. He'd never walk again, they said. He'd spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. Roy Benavidez spent a year in recovery. Every night, after the doctors left, he would roll out of his hospital bed onto the floor. The pain was unbearable. He would crawl to the wall, pull himself up, and try to stand. He fell over and over for months, his body screaming, but he refused to quit. Eventually, he stood. Then he walked. Then he ran. The doctors couldn't believe it. It's impossible, they said. Roy just smiled. I made a promise to go back. My brothers are still there. In 1968, Roy Benavidez returned to Vietnam. He was 37 years old, ancient by combat standards. Most soldiers were 19, 20 years old. But Roy had something they didn't: experience, toughness, and a promise to keep. May 2nd, 1968, started like any other day at Forward Operating Base Loc Ninh. The sun rose, hot and bright over the jungle. Roy Benavidez was in his tent, cleaning his weapon. It was a ritual for him. Your weapon is your life in combat. You keep it clean, you keep it ready, you treat it with respect. He was thinking about home. his wife Hilaria, his 3 children. He'd been away from them for months. The loneliness of war is something civilians never understand. You're surrounded by people, but you've never felt more alone, because the people you love most are thousands of miles away, and every day you wonder if you'll ever see them again. The base was quiet, too quiet. In Vietnam, you learned to read the silence. Sometimes it meant peace. Sometimes it meant the enemy was watching, waiting, planning. At 0630 hours, the radio crackled. Emergency transmission. A 12-man Special Forces reconnaissance team had been inserted deep into Cambodia, across the border, on a classified intelligence-gathering mission. Their call sign was Bright Light. Their mission was simple: get in, gather intel on enemy movements, get out. Nobody was supposed to know they were there, but someone knew. The team had walked straight into a battalion-sized North Vietnamese army force. Over 150 enemy soldiers, well-armed, well-trained, and furious that Americans had crossed into Cambodia. The NVA had surrounded Bright Light. The team was taking heavy casualties. They were calling for immediate extraction. Roy knew what that meant. He'd been on recon missions. When you're deep in enemy territory and you're compromised, you have maybe an hour before they overrun your position, maybe less. The first extraction helicopter went in. Pilot was a brave kid, couldn't have been more than 23 years old. He flew into a wall of gunfire. The helicopter took hundreds of rounds. The pilot was hit. The co-pilot was hit. The crew chief was hit. The helicopter crashed in the jungle. Everyone aboard killed instantly. The second helicopter tried a different approach, coming in low and fast. Same result. They couldn't even get close to the landing zone. The enemy fire was too intense. They had .51 caliber, machine guns set up in the trees, RPGs, automatic weapons. The jungle was a death trap. The third helicopter turned back. The pilot radioed that it was impossible. They're going to die down there, and we can't reach them. Roy Benavidez heard those transmissions. He was standing outside the operations tent, listening to the radio chatter. He could hear the desperation in the voices. He could hear men screaming in the background. He knew what was happening. His brothers were dying. He looked around the base. Everyone was quiet. They all knew what this meant. A 12-man team was about to be wiped out, and there was nothing anyone could do about it. The enemy had chosen their ambush site perfectly. Dense jungle, no clear landing zone, complete cover and concealment. It was a killing field. Roy looked at the helicopter crews. Young men, scared, and nobody blamed them. They just watched 3 helicopters get shot down. Everyone knew the next helicopter that went in would suffer the same fate. This is the moment that defines a hero. Not the fighting, not the medals, but this moment right here, when you know what needs to be done, when you know it will probably cost you your life, and you do it anyway. Roy Benavidez didn't think about it. He didn't hesitate. He didn't weigh the odds or calculate his chances. He heard his brothers dying, and his body moved before his mind could stop it. He ran to his tent, grabbed his medical bag, stuffed it with everything he could carry. Bandages, morphine, plasma, tourniquets. He knew there would be wounded, lots of wounded. He grabbed extra ammunition, magazines for his M16, grenades, smoke grenades, everything he could load onto his body. He didn't put on body armor. There wasn't time. He didn't write a letter home. He didn't say goodbye to anyone. He just ran to the nearest helicopter, a Huey that had been refueling. The pilot saw him coming. "Sergeant, where are you going?" "I'm going in. Get me over that position." The pilot looked at him like he was insane. "Sergeant, I can't land. The LZ is too hot. We'll be shot down before we even touch ground." Roy's response was simple, direct, no room for argument. "Then don't land. Hover at 10 feet. I'll jump." The crew chief, a kid from Ohio who'd been in country for 6 months, shook his head. "Sergeant, this is suicide." Roy looked him in the eye. "Those men down there are already dead if somebody doesn't go in. I'm not asking you to land. Just get me close." The pilot took a breath. He was scared. They were all scared. But he'd been trained for this. He'd signed up for this. "All right, Sergeant. But God help us all." The helicopter lifted off. 3 crew, pilot, co-pilot, crew chief, and 1 passenger with a death wish, or so they thought. What they didn't understand was that Roy Benavidez wasn't trying to die. He was trying to save lives. There's a difference. A man trying to die is reckless. A man trying to save others is calculating, focused, and far more dangerous than any enemy soldier. As they flew toward the coordinates, the jungle below looked peaceful. Green canopy, morning mist still, hanging in the trees. Beautiful, deceptive. That jungle was hiding hell. The radio came alive. The team on the ground was calling out targets, calling for air support, calling for help. Their voices were hoarse from screaming. You could hear the gunfire in the background, constant, overwhelming. We've got wounded. We need medevac now. We're almost out of ammo. They're everywhere. We can't hold much longer. Roy checked his weapon, loaded, safety off. He looked at the crew chief. When I jump, you get this bird out of here fast. Don't wait for me. Don't come back unless I call you. Sergeant, how are we supposed to? I'll call you when it's time. Just be ready. The helicopter approached the landing zone. Even from a distance, you could see the smoke, the muzzle flashes, the chaos. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. We're taking fire. Multiple positions. Bullets punched through the helicopter's thin aluminum skin. The metallic ping, ping, ping sound. The crew chief returned fire with his M60 machine gun, trying to suppress the enemy positions. It was like trying to empty the ocean with a bucket. I can't get any closer. The pilot yelled. We're at 50 feet. Through the open door, Roy could see the landing zone. Bodies on the ground, some moving, some not. Wounded men trying to crawl to cover. And everywhere, muzzle flashes from the tree line. The enemy had them surrounded in a perfect circle. There was no cover, no escape. It was an execution. This is as close as I can get. The pilot screamed. Roy didn't respond. He just jumped. 50 feet. That's a 5-story building. You don't jump from that height. You fall. And Roy fell, hit the ground hard, rolled through the impact. His ankle twisted. Pain shot up his leg. Didn't matter. He was up and running before the dust settled. 75 yards of open ground separated him from the pinned-down team. 75 yards with no cover, no concealment. Nothing but tall grass and death. The enemy saw him immediately. Every gun in that jungle swung toward him. Roy ran in a zigzag pattern. Combat training taking over. Don't run straight. Make yourself a hard target. Bullets tore through the grass around him. He could hear them cracking past his ears. That distinctive supersonic snap that means the bullet passed inches from your head. 30 yards. A bullet hit his right leg, just above the knee. His leg buckled. He stumbled but didn't fall. Kept running. The adrenaline was so intense he barely felt it. 20 yards. Something hit his face. Hot, sharp. Blood poured into his eyes. Shrapnel from a bullet that had hit a rock near his head. Fragments had torn into his forehead, his cheek. He wiped the blood away with his sleeve. Never stopped moving. 10 yards. He could see their faces now. Young faces, terrified faces. One soldier was lying in the grass, gut shot, holding his stomach, trying to keep his insides inside. Another was firing his M16 with one hand, his other arm hanging useless, shattered by a bullet. 5 yards. A grenade landed right in front of Roy. He saw it hit the ground, bounce once. Time seemed to stop. He could see the details on it. Chinese markings on the side. He knew he had maybe 2 seconds. He dove forward, trying to get past it. The grenade exploded. The shockwave lifted him off the ground, threw him 6 feet through the air. Shrapnel tore into his back, his arms, his legs. It felt like someone had taken a baseball bat covered in nails and hit him everywhere at once. His ears were ringing so loud he couldn't hear anything else. The world was muffled, distant, but he could see the soldier, the gut-shot kid, still alive, still looking at him with hope in his eyes. That look said everything. Please don't leave me. Roy Benavidez crawled. His legs weren't working right. His back felt like it was on fire, but he crawled to that soldier, grabbed him by the drag handle on his vest, and pulled him toward a small crater in the ground where the rest of the team had taken cover. The crater was maybe 3 feet deep, 10 feet across. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. Roy pulled the wounded soldier into it and got his first good look at what he was dealing with. 12 men had been inserted. 8 were already dead, their bodies scattered across the landing zone. 4 were still alive, barely. The team leader was a lieutenant. couldn't have been more than 25 years old. Both his legs were shot through. Femoral artery nicked in the left leg. He was losing blood fast. Without immediate treatment, he had maybe 20 minutes. The radio operator was leaning against the side of the crater, trying to work the radio with one hand. His left arm was gone below the elbow, blown off by an RPG. He'd made a tourniquet from his belt. His face was pale, going into shock, but he was still trying to call for help. The medic was there, ironic as that sounds. Shot through the chest, sucking chest wound. Every breath bubbled with blood. He was trying to treat himself, holding a plastic wrapper over the wound to seal it. His hands were shaking, and the gut-shot soldier Roy had just dragged in. Intestines visible through the wound. The worst kind of wound. Even if they got him out in the next hour, his chances were maybe 50-50. All of them were looking at Roy Benavidez, waiting, hoping. This one man who had jumped out of a helicopter into certain death, who had run through a wall of bullets, who had somehow made it to them alive. He was their only chance. Roy didn't waste time. He immediately took charge. "Lieutenant, I need you to stay with me. You're going to be okay." Radio operator, keep trying to raise base. Tell them we need gunship support and extraction, in that order. Medic, hold that seal on your chest. Deep breaths, stay calm. He went to work. First priority, stop the bleeding. The lieutenant's leg first. Roy pulled out a tourniquet, applied it above the wound, twisted it tight. The lieutenant screamed, "I know it hurts, but you're going to live." Next, the gut-shot soldier. This was the worst. You can't tourniquet a stomach wound. Roy packed the wound with gauze, used the soldier's own shirt to apply pressure. "Hold this. Press hard. Don't let go." The radio operator was fading. Shock was setting in. Roy slapped him lightly across the face. "Hey, stay with me. What's your name?" Peterson, sir." "Billy Peterson." "Billy, you're doing great. Keep that tourniquet tight. We're getting out of here." All of this happened while bullets were still hitting the ground around them. The enemy hadn't stopped. They were regrouping, preparing for another assault. Roy could hear them in the jungle, their officers shouting orders in Vietnamese. He knew what was coming. He grabbed the radio from Peterson, called in airstrikes. "Nail 3-7, this is Hotel 1-2. Requesting immediate danger close fire mission. Enemy all around our position. Distance 50 to 100 meters all directions." The response came back immediately. "Hotel 1-2, that's too close. Risk of friendly fire is." Roy cut him off. "I don't care about the risk. If you don't drop ordnance on that tree line in the next 5 minutes, there won't be anyone here to friendly fire. Do it now." There was a pause. Then, "Roger. Birds in the air into minutes. Mark your position with smoke." Roy popped a smoke grenade. Purple smoke billowing up. Purple smoke. Hit everything around the purple smoke. 2 minutes felt like hours. The enemy was advancing. Roy could see them now, moving through the jungle, rifles up, getting ready for the final assault. He distributed what little ammunition they had left. "Everyone who can hold a weapon, get ready. They're coming." The team formed a tiny perimeter inside that crater, for wounded men and Roy Benavidez, about to face a company-sized enemy force. The odds were impossible, but Roy had faced impossible odds his entire life. Then he heard it, the most beautiful sound in the world. Jet engines, F for phantoms, screaming in low and fast. "Everyone down. Cover your heads." The bombs hit. The entire world exploded. Trees vaporized. The ground shook like an earthquake. The concussion wave hit their crater like a physical wall, driving the air from their lungs. Dirt and debris rained down on them. Roy covered the gut-shot soldier with his own body, protecting him from the falling shrapnel. The bombing run lasted 30 seconds. When it stopped, Roy raised his head. The jungle around them was gone, replaced by a moonscape of craters and shattered trees. Smoke everywhere, and bodies. Enemy bodies scattered across the landscape, but more were coming. The bombing had stopped one assault, but it hadn't broken the enemy. They were still out there, hundreds of them, and they were furious now. For the next 2 hours, Roy Benavidez fought a battle that shouldn't have been survivable. The enemy launched assault after assault. They wanted revenge. They wanted to wipe out this team that had embarrassed them, that had called in airstrikes on their positions, that refused to die. Roy was everywhere at once, firing his M16, throwing grenades, directing fire, treating wounds. He'd grab a rifle, empty a magazine, drop it, grab another. When the M16s ran dry, he used captured AK-47s. When those ran out, he used his pistol. He was shot again, left thigh this time. The bullet went straight through. He felt it hit, felt the hot blood running down his leg. He stuffed gauze into the wound from both sides and kept fighting. Then the shoulder. Bullet shattered his collarbone. His left arm went numb, useless. He switched his rifle to his right hand, kept shooting. Another grenade. This one landed in the crater. Roy saw it, grabbed it with his one working hand, and threw it back. It exploded in midair, showering them with dirt but causing no casualties. The men in that crater swore they'd never seen anything like it. A one-armed man snatching a live grenade and throwing it back while under fire. The enemy tried a different tactic. They stopped the frontal assaults and started using snipers, picking off anyone who showed themselves. Roy realized what was happening when a bullet cracked past his head from a different angle. They were in the trees, multiple positions, crossfire. Everybody stay low. They've got snipers. But staying low meant they couldn't return fire effectively. The enemy was slowly closing the noose. Roy made a decision. He grabbed smoke grenades and started popping them around the perimeter. Green smoke, red smoke, purple smoke. Within a minute, they were completely obscured. The snipers couldn't see them anymore. But Roy could hear the enemy, hear them moving closer through the smoke. He grabbed his last grenade, pulled the pin, counted to 3, and threw it in the direction of the sounds, explosion, screams. The movement stopped. He called for more airstrikes. Napalm this time. Put it 30 meters out from our position. Everything around us. Hotel 1-2, that's danger close for napalm. The heat alone. Do it. The napalm came down like the wrath of God. Liquid fire spreading through the jungle. The heat was so intense Roy and his men had to cover themselves with wet cloth to keep from being burned. The air itself seemed to be on fire. The screaming from the enemy positions was horrific. Men don't die quietly when they're burned alive. But it worked. The enemy pulled back. Not far, but enough. Enough for Roy to catch his breath, to check on his men, to try to keep them alive just a little longer. The lieutenant was unconscious now, but still breathing. Billy Peterson, the radio operator with one arm, was still manning that radio, calling for extraction. The medic was barely holding on, each breath weaker than the last. And the gut-shot soldier, somehow, impossibly, was still alive. Roy looked at his watch. 4 hours. They'd been fighting for 4 hours. He'd been shot 5 times now. Grenade fragments all over his body. One arm useless. Both legs wounded. Blood soaked through his uniform. Every movement was agony. But he wasn't done. Not even close. Because he could hear it now. Helicopters. The extraction birds were finally coming back. Two Huey helicopters came in low and fast, just above the treetops. The pilots were different now. Fresh crews, volunteers who knew what they were flying into. They came in anyway. The enemy saw them coming. Every weapon in that jungle opened up. Tracers filled the air, streams of red light reaching up toward the helicopters. One of the Hueys took hits immediately. Smoke poured from the engine, but the pilot kept it in the air, kept coming in. Roy grabbed his radio. Extraction birds, this is Hotel 1-2. LZ is hot. I say again, LZ is extremely hot, but we've got critical wounded. We need you to land. Roger, 1-2. We're coming in. The first helicopter touched down 30 yards from the crater. Roy didn't wait. He grabbed the lieutenant, threw him over his shoulder in a fireman's carry, and ran. His legs were screaming. The wounds in his thighs felt like someone was stabbing him with every step. But he ran. Bullets kicked up dirt around his feet. He could see the enemy, dozens of them, emerging from the tree line, firing as they advanced. They knew the Americans were trying to escape. They were determined to kill them all. Roy reached the helicopter and literally threw the lieutenant inside. The crew chief grabbed him and pulled him in. Roy turned and ran back. Billy Peterson was next. The kid was barely conscious, had lost so much blood. Roy grabbed him, started running. Halfway to the helicopter, an enemy soldier appeared from the smoke, less than 15 feet away, rifle aimed directly at Roy's head. Time seemed to slow down. Roy couldn't reach his weapon. He was carrying Peterson. He was going to die. The enemy soldier pulled the trigger. Click. Misfire. Wet ammunition, or a bad round, or divine intervention. Doesn't matter. The rifle didn't fire. In that half second, Roy's training took over. He dropped Peterson into a protected position, drew his pistol with his one working hand, and fired 3 times. The enemy soldier went down. Roy picked Peterson back up and got him to the helicopter. Ran back again. The medic was unconscious now. Roy had to drag him. His legs were barely working. He was essentially crawling, pulling the medic across the ground. Bullets everywhere. He got the medic to the bird. One more. The gut-shot soldier. Roy ran back to the crater one last time. The soldier looked up at him. "Leave me. Save yourself." Roy's response is legendary. It's been quoted in every military academy, in every leadership course, in every speech about courage and loyalty. Nobody gets left behind. Not today, not ever. That's a promise. He grabbed the soldier and started the run to the helicopter. This was the longest 30 yards of his life. His body was shutting down. Blood loss, shock, exhaustion. His vision was blurring. His hearing was fading. But he kept moving. The enemy was closing in from all sides now. They were done with tactics, done with ambushs. They were charging, all of them. A human wave assault to overwhelm the Americans before they could escape. Roy got the gut-shot soldier to the helicopter, threw him inside, turned to go back for the classified documents and radio codes. They couldn't leave those for the enemy. That's when the bayonet hit him. An enemy soldier had gotten close, hidden in the smoke. He came at Roy from the side, rifle with a fixed bayonet. Roy turned, saw him, tried to dodge, to slow. The bayonet went into his stomach, just below the ribs. The soldier drove it in deep, all the way to the hilt. Pain doesn't describe it. It was like lightning, fire, ice, all at once. Roy felt the blade inside him, felt it tear through muscle, felt something inside him break. The soldier twisted the blade and pulled it out. Roy fell to his knees. Blood poured from the wound. He could feel his intestines pushing out through the hole. He pressed his hand against the wound, trying to hold himself together literally. The enemy soldier raised the rifle to strike again. Roy caught the rifle barrel with his free hand, ripped it from the soldier's grip, and swung it like a club, catching the soldier across the face. The soldier went down. Roy used the rifle as a crutch to pull himself up. He had to get those documents, had to get the radio, intelligence that couldn't fall into enemy hands. He stumbled back to the crater, his insides literally hanging out, blood pouring from the bayonet wound. He grabbed the documents, the radio codes, the classified materials. The helicopter pilots were screaming at him over the radio. "Get on board. We have to leave now." Roy stumbled back toward the helicopter. Each step was impossible. Each breath was agony. His vision was going dark at the edges, but he kept moving. 10 feet from the helicopter, an enemy soldier appeared with an AK-47, full automatic, 20 rounds from 15 feet away. He couldn't miss. He didn't miss. Bullets hit Roy in the back, the arms, the legs. His body jerked with each impact, like he was being electrocuted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He counted them later. 7 more rounds. Roy fell forward into the helicopter. The crew chief grabbed him and pulled him in. The pilot didn't wait. He pulled full collective and the helicopter lifted off, taking enemy fire the entire way up. They thought Roy Benavidez was dead. Inside the helicopter, the crew chief checked Roy for a pulse. Nothing. His eyes were closed. Blood was everywhere. You couldn't see his uniform anymore. Just blood. His face was pale, gray, the color of death. "He's gone," the crew chief said quietly. They covered Roy's face with a poncho. The wounded men in the helicopter, the men he'd just saved, started crying. This man who had jumped into hell to save them, who had been shot and blown up and bayoneted, who had refused to quit, was dead. The helicopter raced back to base. 6 minutes. Fastest 6 minutes the pilot had ever flown. When they landed, medical personnel rushed forward. Stretchers for the wounded. A body bag for Roy Benavidez. A doctor examined him quickly. No pulse, no respiration. Massive trauma. He's gone. Too much blood loss. Multiple gunshot wounds. Bayonet through the abdomen. There's nothing we can do. They unzipped the body bag, started to put Roy inside. This is standard procedure. You don't leave bodies uncovered. It's disrespectful, and it's bad for morale. They lifted Roy's body, placed him in the bag, zipped it shut. 2 soldiers picked up the bag to carry it to the morgue. Inside that bag, in the darkness, Roy Benavidez could hear everything. He was conscious, completely conscious. He couldn't move. His body wouldn't respond. He tried to scream, to tell them he was alive, but his jaw was broken. No sound came out. He was trapped in his own body, being carried to the morgue, about to be placed in cold storage with the dead. Terror doesn't begin to describe what Roy felt in that moment. He could hear the soldiers carrying him, talking about what a hero he was, how he'd saved those men, how he'd died doing it. They were mourning him, and he couldn't tell them he wasn't dead. They were walking toward the morgue. Roy could feel the movement, hear the footsteps. In a few seconds, they'd put him in cold storage. In a few hours, they'd start the paperwork to send his body home. He'd wake up in a refrigerator, if he woke up at all, with every ounce of strength he had left, every bit of will, every drop of determination that had kept him alive for the past 6 hours. Roy Benavidez did the only thing he could do. He spit, blood and saliva. It hit the inside of the body bag. The soldiers carrying him saw the bag move, saw it bulge slightly. They stopped. Did you see that? The bag moved. Bodies don't move. They set the bag down carefully. One of them reached for the zipper, slowly unzipped it, and there, staring up at them, were Roy Benavidez's eyes, wide open, aware, alive. Oh my God, he's alive. Get a doctor. Get a doctor now. The doctor ran over, couldn't believe what he was seeing. He checked for a pulse. There, faint, but there. How is this possible? He was dead. I checked him myself. Roy couldn't speak. His jaw was shattered, but his eyes said everything. I'm not dead yet. They rushed Roy into emergency surgery. The doctors worked on him for 7 hours. When they finally finished, when they cleaned him up and could actually see all his wounds, they couldn't believe it. 37 separate wounds. They counted them, documented them, photographed them because they knew no one would believe it otherwise. 7 gunshot wounds, 1 in each leg, 1 in the right shoulder, 1 in the face, 1 in the back, 1 in the left arm, 1 through the hand. Grenade fragments in both legs, the arms, the back, the face. Over 20 separate fragment wounds. Bayonet wound straight through the abdomen, puncturing the small intestine in 3 places. Shrapnel in the skull from a bullet that had struck a rock near his head. Fractured skull, broken jaw, broken collarbone, collapsed lung. The doctors told his family to prepare for the worst. Even if he survives, he'll never walk again. The damage to his legs, his back, it's too extensive. He'll be paralyzed from the waist down. Roy was conscious enough to hear them, and inside his broken body, he made a decision. You're wrong. The first night, they said he wouldn't survive. His vital signs were too weak. He'd lost too much blood. The infections from the wounds would kill him. He survived. The second day, they said he wouldn't wake up. The trauma to his brain, the shock to his system. He'd be in a coma for weeks, maybe months. He woke up. The third day, when he woke up, they told him he'd never walk again. Roy looked at the doctor and tried to smile, even though his jaw was wired shut, because he'd heard that before, after the landmine in 1965, and he'd proved them wrong then. The recovery was brutal, more brutal than the battle. In combat, adrenaline helps you, blocks the pain, keeps you moving. In recovery, there's no adrenaline, just pain, constant, unending pain. Months of surgeries. They had to repair his intestines, remove dead tissue, clean out infections. His legs needed multiple operations. His shoulder needed pins. His jaw needed to be reconstructed. Physical therapy was torture. Learning to walk again. His legs wouldn't cooperate. The muscles had been torn apart by bullets and shrapnel. Simple things like standing up, things you don't even think about, were impossible challenges. The therapist would help him stand. His legs would collapse. He'd fall, get up, try again, fall, over and over. For weeks, other patients would watch, wondering why this man kept trying, why he wouldn't just accept that some injuries can't be healed. But they didn't know Roy Benavidez. They didn't know that this was a man who had been told his entire life that he couldn't do things, couldn't succeed, couldn't be a soldier, couldn't walk after the landmine, couldn't survive 37 wounds, and every single time, he'd proved them wrong. 6 months after the battle, Roy took his first steps without assistance. Slow, painful, unsteady, but steps. The doctors watched in silence. Medical science said it was impossible, but there he was walking. 9 months later, he walked out of the hospital on his own 2 feet. No wheelchair, no crutches, walking. The staff lined the hallways and applauded. They'd witnessed something they couldn't explain. The human will overcoming the impossible. Roy went home to Texas, to his wife and children. They held him like they'd never let go, because they'd been told so many times he was dead, that he wouldn't make it, that even if he survived he'd never be the same. But here he was, alive, walking, home. But the war wasn't over for Roy Benavidez. Not really, because while his body was healing, another battle was beginning. A battle that would take even longer than his physical recovery. Roy received the Distinguished Service Cross, the second highest military decoration in America. It's an incredible honor. Most soldiers never receive anything close to it, but the men he saved knew the truth. What Roy had done that day deserved more. It deserved the Medal of Honor. The problem was classification. The mission had been in Cambodia. Officially, American troops weren't in Cambodia in 1968. The government denied it. The mission was classified top secret. Everything about it was sealed. The after-action reports, the witness statements, all of it locked away in classified files. The men Roy saved tried to get the mission declassified. They wrote letters. They contacted congressmen. They fought through army bureaucracy. Every request was denied. National security, they were told, can't release classified information. Roy didn't fight for it himself. He went back to civilian life, working as a counselor for troubled youth in Texas. He never talked about what happened that day, never sought recognition. He'd done his duty. His brothers had survived. That was enough. But it wasn't enough for the men he'd saved. They couldn't let it go. They knew what he'd done. They'd been there. They'd watched him jump out of that helicopter. They'd watched him fight for 6 hours with wounds that should have killed him in the first 10 minutes. They'd watched him save every single one of their lives when any other person would have died trying. One of those men was Brian O'Connor, the lieutenant with both legs shot. He made it his mission to get Roy Benavidez the recognition he deserved. For 13 years, O'Connor fought. He contacted every politician he could find. He got the other survivors to write detailed statements. He worked with military historians to document every single detail of the battle. The breakthrough came in 1980. A new administration, new people in the Pentagon, and finally, someone willing to review the case. They declassified the mission. They interviewed every survivor. They reviewed helicopter gun camera footage. They examined medical records. The documentation was overwhelming. 6 survivors, all telling the same story. Medical records showing 37 wounds. Radio transcripts of the battle. Helicopter crew statements. Every piece of evidence pointed to the same conclusion. Roy Benavidez had performed the most extraordinary act of valor in the Vietnam War. In 1981, 13 years after that day in Cambodia, the Army approved it. Master Sergeant Roy Benavidez would receive the Medal of Honor. February 24, 1981, the Pentagon. The ceremony room was packed with military brass, congressmen, journalists, and most importantly, the men Roy had saved. They were older now. O'Connor walked with a cane, his legs still bearing the scars of that day. Billy Peterson, the radio operator, had a prosthetic arm, but they were alive. They had families, children, careers, all because one man refused to let them die. Roy Benavidez stood at attention in his dress uniform. At 45 years old, he looked older than his years. The wounds had aged him. The pain was constant, but he stood straight, shoulders back, every inch a soldier. President Ronald Reagan entered the room. Everyone stood. Reagan walked directly to Roy, shook his hand, held it for a long moment. Sergeant Benavidez, what you did represents the very best of America. The citation was read aloud. It took almost 10 minutes. With each sentence, the room grew quieter. Hardened combat veterans, Men who'd seen everything war could throw at them, had tears in their eyes. Master Sergeant Benavidez's gallant choice to join voluntarily his comrades, who were in critical straits, to expose himself constantly to withering enemy fire, and his refusal to be stopped despite numerous severe wounds, saved the lives of at least 8 men. The words couldn't capture it. No words could. How do you describe a man who jumped into an impossible situation, who was shot 37 times and kept fighting, who held his own, intestines in with one hand while pulling wounded soldiers to safety with the other, who was put in a body bag twice and refused to die? President Reagan placed the Medal of Honor around Roy's neck, the pale blue ribbon with the white stars, the highest military decoration in the United States. Then Reagan did something unprecedented. He stepped back and saluted. The President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, saluting a sergeant. It had never happened before in American history. But Reagan insisted. This man deserves it, he said simply. But Reagan wasn't finished. He looked at Roy, at the men Roy had saved, at everyone in that room, and he said something that would become famous. If the story of his heroism were a movie script, you would not believe it. You would say, no, this is too incredible. The writer is making it up. Nobody could do these things. Nobody could be this brave. But it's all true, every word. And we stand here today in the presence of genuine heroism. The room erupted in applause, standing ovation. It went on for 5 minutes. Roy stood there, uncomfortable with the attention, wishing he could just disappear. He wasn't fighting for medals that day. He was fighting for his brothers. That's all he'd ever wanted anyone to understand. After the ceremony, reporters surrounded him. Sergeant Benavidez, how did you do it? How did you keep fighting with those wounds? Roy's answer was simple, direct, the same answer he'd give for the rest of his life. I'm not a hero. The real heroes are the ones who didn't come back. I just did my job. Any soldier would have done the same. But everyone in that room knew better. Not any soldier, not any human being. What Roy Benavidez did that day was beyond human capability. It was beyond courage. It was beyond heroism. It was something else entirely. It was love. Love for his brothers. Love so strong that death itself couldn't stop it. Roy Benavidez spent the rest of his life telling his story. Not for glory, not for fame. He hated the attention, but he understood something important. His story could inspire others. It could show young people what courage really means. It could honor the men who didn't come back. He spoke at schools, at veteran events, at military bases across America. Thousands of speeches over the years. And every single time, he told the truth. I was terrified that day. I didn't feel brave. I felt scared. But courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is doing what needs to be done even when you're terrified. He became particularly passionate about speaking to troubled youth, kids from rough backgrounds, kids who'd been told they'd never amount to anything. Because Roy had been one of those kids, the orphan, the sharecropper, the Mexican-American kid in a segregated school, who everyone said would never succeed. I'm proof, he'd tell them, that it doesn't matter where you start. It doesn't matter what people say you can't do. What matters is what's inside you. What matters is whether you quit when things get hard, or whether you keep fighting. The impact was profound. Teachers reported that students who heard Roy speak would completely change their attitudes. Kids who were failing would start trying. Kids who were headed for trouble would straighten out, because they'd met a real hero. Not a movie star, not an athlete, but a man who had faced the worst humanity could offer and had come through it with his honor intact. Roy also worked tirelessly for veterans' rights. He saw how Vietnam veterans were treated when they came home. The protests, the hatred, the lack of support. He fought to change that. He testified before Congress. He worked with veterans organizations. He made sure that the men who'd served in Vietnam got the respect and care they deserved. The Army named a ship after him, the USNS Benavidez, a logistics support vessel. Schools across America bear his name. His story is taught at West Point, at every military academy. It's required reading for Special Forces soldiers, because it represents the standard. This is what we aspire to be. In 1998, Roy Benavidez died at the age of 63. The wounds from Vietnam had never fully healed. The pain was constant, but he never complained. He'd live to see his children grow up, to meet his grandchildren. He'd live to tell his story, to inspire thousands of people. He'd live to honor the men who didn't make it back. His funeral was held in Texas. Thousands attended. Veterans from every war, from every branch of service. The men he'd saved were there, crying openly, carrying his casket. They had 30 extra years of life because of him. 30 years to love their families, to build careers, to make a difference in the world. All because Roy Benavidez refused to let them die. 6 hours, May 2nd, 1968. That's what it took to create a legend. 6 hours of hell, of pain, of impossible courage. One man who refused to let his brothers die. One man who made death itself retreat. Roy Benavidez was shot 37 times that day. 37 times. Think about that. Not shot at, shot. Bullets that hit him, that tore through his flesh, that should have killed him. Any one of those wounds could have been fatal. The bayonet wound alone should have been instantly fatal. But he kept fighting. For 6 hours. His body was broken, shattered. Medical science said he shouldn't have survived. But his spirit never broke. That's the key. That's what made him extraordinary. Not his physical toughness, though that was incredible. His mental toughness. His refusal to quit. His absolute determination to save his brothers, no matter the cost. When people ask what the Medal of Honor represents, this is the answer. Not someone who fought without fear. Roy Benavidez was terrified that day. He admitted it freely. But someone who fought despite the fear. Someone who put others before himself. Someone who proved that the human spirit is stronger than any weapon, tougher than any enemy, more powerful than death itself. The men Roy Benavidez saved that day went on to live full lives. O'Connor became a teacher, influenced thousands of students. Peterson worked with veterans, helped hundreds of men deal with PTSD and combat wounds. The others built families, served their communities, made the world better. All of that happened because one man decided that no, sacrifice was too great to save his brothers. And here's what's truly remarkable. Roy never thought he was special. He never understood why people made such a big deal about what he'd done. To him, it was simple. His brothers needed help. He went to help them. That's what soldiers do. That's what brothers do. But it wasn't simple. It was extraordinary. It was heroism in its purest form, not the Hollywood version with dramatic music and slow-motion sequences. Real heroism. Ugly, bloody, painful, terrifying heroism. The kind that costs everything and asks for nothing in return. This is what it means to be a warrior. Not killing the enemy, not winning battles, but protecting those who stand beside you, no matter the cost. Being willing to give everything, including your life, for your brothers. That's the warrior spirit. That's what Roy Benavidez showed us. His story reminds us that heroes are real. They walk among us. They don't wear capes. They don't have superpowers. They're ordinary people who find themselves in extraordinary situations and make the choice to be extraordinary. They're the men and women who, when faced with impossible odds, when faced with certain death, say not today, not while I'm still breathing, not while my brothers need me. Roy Benavidez taught us that the human will is the most powerful weapon ever created. That determination, loyalty, and love are stronger than bullets, stronger than explosions, stronger than anything the enemy can throw at you. He taught us that one person can make a difference. That one person, refusing to quit, can change everything. Remember his name, Roy Benavidez. Say it out loud. Remember what he did. Remember what he stood for. Remember that on May 2nd, 1968, in a jungle in Cambodia, one American soldier proved that heroes are real. And if this story moved you, if it inspired you, if it reminded you what courage really means, I need you to do something. Hit that like button right now. Not for me, for Roy, for the men he saved, for every veteran who's ever put on a uniform and said, I'll go where others won't, I'll do what others can't. Leave a comment and tell me which Medal of Honor story you want to hear next, because there are thousands of stories like this. Stories of ordinary men and women doing extraordinary things. Stories that need to be told. Stories that deserve to be remembered. And subscribe to Silent Warriors, because we're going to keep telling these stories every week, every month, for as long as it takes. The stories of the men and women who gave everything, who never asked for recognition, who deserve to be immortalized. These are our heroes. These are our warriors, and their stories will never be forgotten. Not while we're still here to tell them. Not while there are people who believe that honor, courage, and sacrifice still mean something. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join us in honoring the men and women who made this country what it is, who gave us the freedom we have, who paid the price that we'll never have to pay. Silent warriors, telling the stories that matter, honoring the heroes who deserve it. Roy Benavidez, Medal of Honor, May 2nd, 1968, never forgotten. Silent warriors, out.